Hello, I'm Henry Mack, and welcome to this week's Issues. A new digital training opportunity for residents of inner-city Miami. Details ahead on Ecotech's Visions Free Digital Citizen Bootcamp, a Knight Foundation-funded project that could help put you in a tech career. But first, Broward residents are being asked to open their pocketbooks this November as two competing sales tax referendums hit the ballot. While one is earmarked for transportation, the other is tagged for infrastructure, and both claim similar goals like easing South Florida's crazy traffic gridlock. So will voters be confused or just fed up? Or what's going on? So joining us to help explain what is happening with this tax debate, we welcome Broward Mayor and longtime Commissioner Marty Kerr and Western Mayor Daniel Sturmer. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. So let's start with the competing plan details. First up, we have a graphic. The transportation tax county commissioners originally wanted an additional 1% sales tax that's now being dropped to 0.75 penny of a percent, that the tax would run for 20 years, collecting as much as $7 billion. The money raised would be earmarked solely for transportation-related projects, like signal light synchronization and an expansion of light rail services and improvements to the county bus system. The city-sponsored infrastructure sales tax would raise roughly $316 million a year and remain open-ended. While the cities would get 60% of the money raised, the county would just get 40%. And so no specific projects really have been tied to the plan, but the dollars are earmarked for capital projects like public buildings, affordable housing, land acquisition, and economic development. And so for the past 2 years, Dan, and I know you've been part of this, the Metropolitan Planning Board has worked with the cities and the county on transportation taxes. But things went sour now that we have two taxes, at least of today's date, right, headed to the ballot. So Marty Kerr, as Broward's mayor, help me and the viewers sort of unpack what that was all about.
And first, Henry, thank you so much for having Mayor Sturmer and I on. I'm a big fan of your program. I watch it all the time, and you know, I think it's really great the fact that you bring all these issues to the forefront for so many South Florida residents. And I'll tell you, what we have right now, truthfully, could be totally different on June 14th when we have another public hearing. And there are, at this point, two competing ballot proposals. And just to explain that to the voters, what that means is if these proposals are on the ballot in November, when people go to the ballot box, they then make a decision as to whether or not they would like to support it or not support it based on what's in the best interest of themselves and their families and their community. And so it's really an individual decision for our voters. At this point, there are two competing tax proposals.
Yeah, but here's the but, right? So that sounds nice, leaving it open to the voters, but as an elected official, you sort of have the responsibility of providing what's best for us.
Well,
or clarity, at least, on the matter.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing that happened was at our last county commission meeting, and I voted against it because I have my own personal feelings about increasing the sales tax. I think it's a regressive tax, and I have concerns with that. But it did pass, the counties did pass on a 5-3 vote. And what that would mean is our residents would have the ability, if this is on the November ballot, if nothing changes from now in November, to be able to go in there and determine whether or not they would like to increase the sales tax by 0.75 of 1 cent. And what that would mean, that money then would go to mass transit and regional transportation services that the county provides. The cities, under our charter, can also put something on the ballot. What that means is that if cities representing 50% of the population plus one pass resolutions to put an item on the ballot, it goes on the ballot. And the county believes that once that happens, it comes to us, and we are responsible to put it on the ballot.
Right.
So cities representing about 94% of Broward County's population passed resolutions to put an infrastructure tax on the ballot. That means if the voters vote for it, sales tax will be increased by another penny, and that money would be distributed 60% to the cities for infrastructure projects and 40% to the county for infrastructure projects. And what I'm hoping right now, there are competing proposals. I think when you have competing proposals, that can be very confusing and also can doom both of them to failure. And what I'm hoping is between now and June 14th, when is the county commission meeting that we're going to decide finally what is going to happen. I'm hoping that the cities and the county will get together and work this way out so that we can so that one proposal is put on the ballot for people to consider.
Dan, is that possible?
I believe it's possible. And thank you, Henry, for the invitation, and thank you for the conversation this morning, Mayor Kerr. To your question, yes, there are at the moment 2 competing ballot questions. One of them passed by the County Commission the other day with regard to increasing a surtax by 0.75 cents for transportation, and the cities submitted to the Supervisor of Elections identical resolutions representing 94 daises representing 94% of Broward's population directly to the supervisor. The cities believe, pursuant to statute, we have direct access to the ballot. So we believe, as we sit here today, there will be at least 2 questions put forth to the voters of Broward County in November, which would currently raise, if they both stay on, their taxes 1.75 cents. The question then becomes, on June 14th, the County Commission has another public hearing with regard to their infrastructure proposal, which would conceivably be a 3rd ballot question. Now, we all know there's an issue of whether 1 question would pass. I think there's almost certainty 2, much less 3, are on the ballot. All of them will go down in flames. So the question becomes now, how do we, as elected officials governing 1.8 million people, get to a place where we can all agree on what it should be?
So what does that look like? Does that mean amending or adjusting your city infrastructure tax to include what the county would reasonably expect by way of resolving a lot of our mass transportation issues?
I think there are, first of all, everything's on the table. We have different views, and as the mayor said, the county has a regional obligation with regard to mass transit. The issue is, locally for cities, we have major billions of dollars of infrastructure needs. In some respects, so does the county. The county needs the transportation tax for what is known as O&M, operation and maintenance. That's what's missing for the county to create a bigger mass transit plan, which is what this money will generate. The cities have billions of dollars of needs, and every city has a capital plan that sets forth, at least for the next 5 years, what the capital needs are for that city. So when people say the cities are just putting stuff out there, they don't have a plan, that's not correct. Every city in Broward County has a value plan and a strategic plan that lays forth its capital needs.
Right.
And should and when the city's ballot question is put out there, all of the 31 cities, through a unified message, will tell the residents in their city specifically, like the school board did last year, if that tax passes, what improvements will happen within their municipal boundaries. So you will see a concerted effort to educate the population and the residents of Broward County as to why it's important.
Are you implying that there's no concerted effort on the part of the county to educate the voters about what this transportation tax will?
Oh, I think there's going to be a concerted effort on both parts. The concern is, while they're educating, and we might not disagree on the need for mass transit, we believe there's a larger need and a more localized need for infrastructure, because that's where our residents see every day. They call us with regard to flooding and street improvements.
Marty, you voted no to the transportation county taxes. I mean, well, I'm assuming that you agree, right?
Well, I'll tell you my my thoughts. You know, and let me tell you the reason I voted no. And truthfully, if I didn't feel we had a ministerial obligation to put the cities on the ballot, I'd vote no on that as well, because I just believe I have very grave concerns about increases in the sales tax. I always do. I believe it's a very regressive tax. You know, people that don't make a whole lot of money, people that live on fixed incomes, and others, when you increase the sales tax, it affects them the greatest. And so I always have concerns with that. But regardless of my feelings, there is going to be something on the ballot. The majority of the county commission voted to put something on the ballot, and cities representing 94% of the population voted to put something on the ballot. So what that means is that now, since something's going to be there, we have to work this out. The cities and the county need to get together to work something out, to put something that's very clear on the ballot that is fair to both sides. And here's the thing, everybody, all the city mayors, Dan, all my county commission colleagues, everybody's very well intentioned, and everybody's trying to do what they believe their responsibilities are. The county, we provide regional services. So my colleagues decided to put the transportation proposed surtax on the ballot, meaning that it goes to mass transit and goes to things that we're required to fund. The cities, Dan and Weston, they represent their constituencies, and it's their job to provide infrastructure improvements and to put in fire stations and things of that nature. They're doing what they need to do. So now
why is the 40% of the city's tax not good enough for the county?
Well, what I'm hoping at the end of the day is there are some disputes, and 40% is still a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah.
But what I'm hoping will happen, truthfully, at the end of the day, is June 14th is basically the drop dead deadline.
Right.
I really believe that reasonable people like Mayor Sturmer and colleagues that I have on the county commission and other city mayors are going to get together, and I'm very hopeful that that all of us are going to come up with something that is much more fair to both sides, that we can all agree to put before the voters so that they can make the best and most informed decision possible, and that's what needs to happen.
So, a large part of the criticism of the county transportation tax has been that there's no plan. We have no idea what we're going to do with this money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we have some sort of 2035 transportation plan that the MPO put together.
There's a 2035 long-range transportation plan. There's a 2040 long-range transportation plan, but that's put out by the MPO. That's different than the county's mass transit plan. And so the county has, based on conversations, originally started out with a 100% plan, and then reduced it to the 70% plan based on what was then the negotiations of splitting the transportation tax should it pass at 70-30. To your question of isn't 40% enough for the county, that 40% would generate roughly $139 million. A year to Broward County. 60% would go to the cities to be divided to be divided proportionately. My concern and my belief is we can actually get a win both using the infrastructure tax. There's nothing that prohibits what is currently programmed money for infrastructure that the county generates to be shifted to O&M, to operation and maintenance, and then backfill the $139 million that was moved from currently programmed infrastructure to O&M and backfill that money. It's my belief that pursuant to the infrastructure, we could actually accomplish both. Therefore, everybody wins. The question becomes, is that enough? The county originally believed it needed 100 cents. Then it believed it needed, and this isn't about the mayor. The mayor knows he and I can have conversations about this. There are others out there that believe differently than the mayor does. So the question is 100 cents, then 70 cents, and then 40 cents, or under their proposal with what's going to come up at 49%, enough to do what they need to do? It's not my job to figure out what their plan is. Their plan is generally a bus-based plan. I used to chair the MPO for 4 years and chaired the 2035 long-range transportation plan, which name was transformation, because we moved in this plan from a vehicle-based program to a mass transit pedestrian-friendly program. It's the first time it was ever done. The problem is it required between $4 and $10 billion in O&M, and the county doesn't have the O&M. But this was the plan that was moving forth, that called for regional centers that would be hubs for mass transit. But around it, you'd get land uses that would have residential, commercial, pedestrian-friendly things, so you'd revitalize whole neighborhoods, which is really what will make this go. Part of the problem is Broward County is built out, and we need to have the conversation with mass transit of, are we going to make a lane or are we going to take a lane? I mean, there's a philosophical question. Whether buses are right or wrong, if you put them on the street in the congestion, how do you move them so that when you get on that bus, you're moving in a rapid enough pace that you're going to do it? Is my vision long enough to get to the light rail? That's my hope. I chaired and tried to bring in the light rail, and I believe folks won't get out of their cars until there's a system that is beneficial, reliable, timely, and cost-effective for them to get on it, to use it. That may be for my kids and the mayor's kids. That's our hope. The question becomes today, where are we and how do we get to where we're going to take the next step in our future?
Right. Marty, closing thoughts. We have like 1 minute left.
Sure, I'll be very quick. Well, first, once again, thank you so much for having us on here. And as you can see, Mayor Sturmer, myself, we're all very passionate about trying to make our community the best place it possibly can. You know, we have 2 million people that live here in Broward County, and 15 million people visit us each year. By the year 2035, it's going to be much greater. As a matter of fact, by the year 2025, about 41 million people will be flying in and out of our airport. And with that amount of people, you have to figure out ways to get them to and from places in the easiest and quickest period of time for them to make it most convenient for them. And at the end of the day, as you can see, there are some disagreements between the county and the cities. None of those disagreements are personal. Everybody considers they're all friends. We all have the best interests of the people at heart. But at the end of the day, to get something on the ballot that really has a chance of passing and to really help educate the voters about what it will do, the city and the cities and the county need to come together by June 14th, and they have to come up with something that is reasonable to both sides and that is easily understandable for our voters, so they can make the most informed decision possible. And I have a feeling that's going to happen.
Thank you. The point of today's show was just, again, to bring the voices on so the public can make an informed decision. So please, please, please research everything that's out there. Marty and Dan, thanks so much for joining us. Up next, we'll get a leg up as the competition for jobs heats up. We'll tell you about a unique digital skills program in Miami-Dade County that lets you earn while you learn. So stay with us. One is earmarked for transportation, the other is tagged for infrastructure, and both claim similar goals like easing South Florida's crazy traffic gridlock. So will voters be confused or just fed up? Or what's going on? So joining us to help explain what is happening with this tax debate, we welcome Broward Mayor and longtime Commissioner Marty Kerr and Western Mayor Daniel Sturmer. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. So let's start with the competing plan details. First up, we have a graphic. The transportation tax county commissioners originally wanted an additional 1% sales tax that really had been tied to the plan, but the dollars are earmarked for capital projects like public buildings, affordable housing, land acquisition, and economic development. And so for the past 2 years, Dan, and I know you've been part of this, the Metropolitan Planning Board has worked with the cities and the county on transportation taxes. But things went sour now that we have two taxes, at least of today's date, right, headed to the ballot. So Marty Kerr, as Broward's mayor, help me and the viewers sort of unpack what that was all about.
And first, Henry, thank you so much for having Mayor Sturmer and I on. I'm a big fan of your program. I watch it all the time, and you know, I think it's really great the fact that you bring all these issues to the forefront for so many South Florida residents. And I'll tell you, what we have right now, truthfully, could be totally different on June 14th when we have another public hearing. And there are, at this point, two competing ballot proposals. And just to explain that to the voters, what that means is if these proposals are on the ballot in November, when people go to the ballot box, they then make a decision as to whether or not they would like to support it or not support it based on what's in the best interest of themselves.
It's now being dropped to 0.75% that the tax would run for 20 years, collecting as much as $7 billion. The money raised would be earmarked solely for transportation-related projects, like signal light synchronization and an expansion of light rail services and improvements to the county bus system. The city-sponsored infrastructure sales tax would raise roughly $316 million a year and remain open-ended. While the cities would get 60% of the money raised, the county would just get 40%, and so no specific projects. Hello, I'm Henry Mack, and welcome to this week's Issues. A new digital training opportunity for residents of inner-city Miami. Details ahead on Ecotech's Visions-Free Digital Citizen Bootcamp, a Knight Foundation-funded project that could help put you in a tech career. But first, Broward residents are being asked to open their pocketbooks this November as two competing sales tax referendums hit the ballot. While